The rusted gates of St. Mary's Asylum creaked open. A dare. That's how it always starts. A group of friends, fueled by youthful bravado and cheap beer, stood at the precipice of the unknown.
Are you sure about this, Em?
Don't worry, Jake. It's just an old building. What's the worst that could happen?
The group, consisting of Jake, Emily, Ben and Chloe, stepped cautiously onto the overgrown path. Their laughter seemed to die quickly, swallowed by the oppressive silence of the asylum grounds. A sign, barely clinging to its post, read, "St. Mary's Asylum for the Mentally Disturbed." As they approached the main entrance, a cold gust of wind sent shivers down their spines. The heavy oak doors stood ajar, as if inviting them into the darkness that lay beyond. This is how horror movies always start. Will we ever learn? The air inside was thick with dust and the stench of decay. Flashlights flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls, making it hard to discern what was real and what was their imagination playing tricks.
This place is creepy.
Ben, the tallest of the group, felt a chill despite his imposing stature. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Chloe, usually the life of the party, found herself unusually quiet. Her eyes darted nervously around the room, taking in the peeling paint, the rusted gurneys, and the strange medical instruments scattered about.
Guys, maybe we should just go.
Come on, Chloe, don't be such a scaredy cat.
But even Jake couldn't deny the growing sense of unease. The air felt heavy, as if laden with unseen dread. He raised his flashlight, its beam illuminating a wall covered in strange symbols. Scratched into the paint, they looked like the desperate pleas of a tortured soul.
What the...
Jake began, but his words were cut short by the sound of a blood-curdling scream echoing from the depths of the asylum. The scream hung in the air, sending a jolt of terror through the group. Emily clutched Ben's arm, her eyes wide with fear.
What was that?
Probably just an animal.
But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that the scream had been human, filled with a primal terror that sent chills down his spine. The silence that followed was deafening. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of wind in the broken windows sounded like approaching footsteps. The air grew colder and a sense of dread settled over them like a shroud.
This is messed up, even for you, Jake.
Chloe, her face pale, pointed to a door at the end of the hallway. It was slightly ajar, and a faint light flickered from within.
Maybe we should see what's in there.
Jake hesitated, a war raging within him between curiosity and the overwhelming urge to flee. The flickering light seemed to beckon them forward, promising answers to the mysteries of St. Mary's, or perhaps something far more sinister.
All right, let's check it out, but stay close.
They approached the door cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. As they drew nearer, they could hear a low humming sound coming from within, accompanied by the faint scent of ozone. Jake pushed the door open slowly, and they peered inside. The room was small and sparsely furnished, with a single cot, a chair, and a table. On the table sat an old reel-to-reel tape recorder, its spools slowly turning. The humming sound was coming from it.
What is this place?
I don't know, but I have a bad feeling about this.
He reached out and hit the stop button on the tape recorder. The humming ceased, and an eerie silence descended upon the room.
Maybe we should just go.
But before anyone could move, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The sudden noise sent a jolt of fear through the group.
What the hell was that?
They all turned towards the door, their hearts pounding in their chests. The door handle rattled as if someone was trying to get in.
We need to get out of here.
Jake ran to the door and tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked.
It's no use. We're trapped.
Panic set in as the reality of their situation dawned on them. They were trapped in a haunted asylum with no way out. The temperature plummeted, sending shivers down their spines.
It's freezing in here.
Lily said, her teeth chattering.
I don't like this, Sarah.
Alex whimpered, clutching Mike's arm. Suddenly the tape recorder sprang to life. The reels spun and a raspy voice filled the room.
Get out, while you still can.
The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was deep and guttural, filled with sadness and a chilling warning.
What is that?
Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alex tried to force the door open, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if some unseen force held it shut.
We're not alone here. I can feel it.
Mike whispered, his eyes wide with fear. A cold gust swept through, extinguishing their flashlights. The only light came from the eerie glow of the tape recorder.
Help us!
Lily screamed into the darkness, but her pleas were met with only silence. A silence more terrifying than any scream. The darkness was all-encompassing, suffocating. They huddled together, their fear a tangible presence in the cold air. Every creak and groan of the old building sent shivers down their spines.
Jake, do something!
Emily's voice was high-pitched with panic. Jake fumbled for his lighter, his hands shaking. The flick of the wheel was a welcome sound, the small flame a beacon of hope in the overwhelming darkness.
We need to find another way out. There has to be another door, a window, something.
As they moved cautiously around the room, their shadows danced on the walls, distorted and menacing in the flickering light. Whispers seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, cold breaths on the backs of their necks.
Did you hear that?
Hear what?
I thought I heard someone calling my name.
They listened intently, but there was nothing but the sound of their own ragged breathing and the incessant creaking of the old asylum. But the feeling of being watched, of being hunted, intensified. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the darkness. It was Emily.
Emily, S1, Emily!
Jake and Ben shouted in unison, their voices echoing in the darkness. They rushed towards the source of the scream, their hearts pounding in their chests. The lighter flickered in Jake's hand, casting grotesque shadows that danced and swirled around them. Then they saw her. Emily was backed against the wall, her eyes wide with terror, her finger pointing at something behind Jake and Ben.
Behind you!
She screamed, her voice raw with panic. They spun around, their hearts in their throats, expecting to come face to face with some unspeakable horror. And then they saw it. A figure, tall and skeletal, its eyes glowing an eerie green in the darkness. It was draped in what looked like a tattered hospital gown, its long, bony fingers reaching out towards them.
Run!
Jake screamed, dropping the lighter in his terror. The lighter fell to the floor, plunging them once again into darkness. But even in the darkness they could hear the heavy breathing of the figure, feel its icy presence closing in on them. Panic surged through them. They were trapped in the darkness with something evil, something that wanted to do them harm. Blindly they scrambled back, bumping into each other in their desperate attempt to escape the clutches of the apparition. Emily cried out as she tripped and fell, her scream swallowed by the oppressive darkness.
Emily.
Ben shouted, reaching out for her, but his hand grasped only empty air. Jake stumbled over something, falling heavily to the cold, hard floor. As he lay there, his heart pounding in his chest, he heard it, a low growl, guttural and filled with malice, coming from right beside him. Terror lent him strength he didn't know he possessed. Scrambling to his feet, he ran blindly through the darkness, his only thought to escape the horrors of the asylum. He could hear Ben and Chloe behind him, their panicked breaths and stumbling footsteps echoing his own terror. Something brushed past him, its touch sending a wave of icy fear down his spine. Suddenly, he burst through a doorway, collapsing onto the cold stone floor of a hallway. He could see a sliver of moonlight coming from a window at the far end of the corridor. Their salvation.
This way.
He shouted, scrambling to his feet and sprinting towards the light. They didn't stop running until they were well clear of the asylum grounds, the imposing silhouette of St. Mary's receding into the distance like a nightmare fading with the dawn. Gasping for breath, they collapsed onto the dewy grass, their bodies trembling with fear and exhaustion. They had escaped with their lives, but the horrors they had witnessed within the walls of St. Mary's would forever be seared into their memories. The terrifying apparition, they were forever a part of them now. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the darkness, casting long shadows across the deserted landscape, they knew that a part of them would forever remain within those crumbling walls. Haunted by the memories of that night, they vowed never to return to St. Mary's. But even as they made their vow, they couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed them from the asylum. Something dark and sinister that lurked just beyond the edges of their vision. Its presence felt like a cold breath on the back of their necks. As they turned their backs on the haunted asylum and walked towards the rising sun, they carried with them not only the scars of terror, but also the chilling certainty that some horrors are fated to follow you home, and that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed.